Chapter 10, The Sermon at Benaras. Sermon means a moral preaching, updesh, talk on religious or moral subject. This chapter is written by Betty Renshaw, an American writer. Before we proceed, let us know what is a sermon. As I told you, sermon is a moral preaching or is a talk on religious or moral subject. Now, come down. See the words. Find out the meaning of the words and phrases given in the box. First word is afflicted with, means affected. Be composed, be at peace or calm. Desolation is deep sorrow. Lamentation is expression of sorrow. Procure means bring and be subject to, liable to. Have you heard of the Sermon on the Mount? Who delivered it? Sermon on the Mount was delivered by Jesus Christ. This is another preaching of the Jesus Christ. And who do you think delivered a sermon at Benaras? That is by Gautam Buddha. Now this chapter, Sermon at Benaras, is a story of an unfortunate girl, Kisa Gautami, whose son died. She went to different people. She asked them to give her some medicine to cure her son. People thought she had gone mad. At last, she was sent to the Buddha. He asked Gautami to bring some mustard seed, but the seed should come from the house where no one had ever died. She went to different houses. She could not find any house where no one had ever died. She sat down exhausted and tired. Then she saw the lights of the city. The flickering lights changed her mind. That lights made her realize that human life was also like that. Human life flickers up. Flickers means वो जलती और बुझती है. It goes off, then in on, like the lights, and ultimately it gets extinguished. It is over. It dies. It brought a new wisdom about death to Kisa Gautami. So, my dear students, the Buddha delivered his first sermon at Benaras. This was his first sermon. It carries a great wisdom about death. According to Lord Buddha, all who are born have to die. Death carries all one by one, just like an ox to the slaughterhouse. Everybody will die. It is common to all. Nobody can escape it. Rich or poor, male or female, all have to die. Father cannot save his son. A relative cannot save another relative. We must not grieve over the death of anyone. Only those who overcome sorrow get peace. In order to overcome suffering and grief, we must give up the complaints, the griefs, the lamentations. And the blessed are those who are not affected by sorrow at all. Human beings are like the pots which are made by the potter, which have to be destroyed. All meet their end sooner or later. Weeping or grieving is no solution to sorrow. So we should learn to overcome the sorrows. This is the gist of the lesson. A very, very important lesson. Now you see the lesson. Gautam Buddha, who was born in 563 BC and died in 483 BC, began life as a prince named Siddhartha Gautam in northern India. You must be aware of his life. At 12, he was sent away for schooling in the Hindu sacred scriptures, and 4 years later, he returned home to marry a princess. So at just 12, he went for schooling, that is to study the holy scriptures, holy books, and after 4 years, when he returned home, he had to marry. They had a son and lived for 10 years as befitted royalty. He had a son after his marriage, that is for 10 years, he lived as befitted, as proper of any royal, as befitting as any royal, any king. At about the age of 25, the prince, heretofore shielded from the sufferings of the world, while out hunting, chanced upon a sick man. Now, this prince, when he was of 25 years, heretofore means before this point, he was shielded, he was covered from the sufferings of the world. Naturally, he was a prince, he lived in the palace, and he did not know what the suffering is. उसे पता ही नहीं था कि suffering होती क्या है, दुख क्या होता है. While out hunting, when he went out for hunting, chanced upon a sick man. He came across, by chance, he saw a sick man. Then he saw an aged man. Then a funeral procession. Then the procession whereby the dead person is taken to the graveyard or the cremation ground. And finally, he saw a monk, that is a hermit, एक भिक्षु उसने देखा, begging for alms, begging for charity. These sights so moved him that he at once went out into the world to seek enlightenment concerning the sorrows he had witnessed. And all these sights, these four sights, so moved him, so touched him. He was totally worried, upset seeing these sights, that he at once went out. He left his palace, he left his wife and son, and he went out into the world to seek enlightenment. Oh, enlightenment. He came out to know the truth, to seek, to search the truth. Okay, what is the truth? Uh, Enlightenment we can also call a state of high spiritual knowledge. Why? What is the knowledge? What is the reasons behind these sorrows that he had seen, witnessed? He wandered for 7 years and finally sat down under a peepal tree. And for this knowledge, he wandered, he roamed for 7 years, and finally he sat down under a peepal tree where he vowed to stay, where he promised. Vow means to promise to do some specific thing. Where he vowed, he promised, he sat under the peepal tree to until enlightenment came. So enlightenment came to him. Enlightened after 7 days, he renamed the tree the Bodhi tree. He called it the tree of wisdom and began to teach and to share his new understandings. Now, when he sat under the tree, after 7 days, he was enlightened. He got the truth. He attained that truth. And he named that tree also Bodhi tree. Bodhi tree means tree of wisdom. And then he started teaching and preaching his new understanding. At that point, he became known as the Buddha, the awakened or the enlightened. From that time onwards, he attained the name Buddha. Buddha means awakened, जो जागृत हो चुका, जिसे ज्ञान मिल चुका है. The Buddha preached his first sermon at the city of Benaras, most holy of the dipping places on the river Ganges. And then Buddha, he preached, he gave his first sermon. पहला उन्होंने उपदेश दिया बनारस में. That is the most holy of the dipping places, bathing places. जितनी भी bathing places हैं, sacred places हैं, उसमें Banaras is the most holy on the banks of river Ganga. That sermon has been preserved and is given here. And so that is the sermon which we are going to study. It reflects the Buddha's wisdom about one inscrutable kind of suffering. And it tells us about the Buddha's wisdom about the inscrutable, means something that cannot be understood. एक ऐसा point है ये which is not understood, that suffering which people doesn't understand, that death has to come. We know that death has to come, but again it gives lot and lots of suffering. So here we start with the chapter.